Welcome
to Film Shapes,
the podcast.
Okay, hello everyone. This edition of the Film Shapes podcast is a bit different. We're going to talk about the upcoming Revelation Film Festival here in Perth, Western Australia. And we're joined by the festival director, Richard Sowada. Hi, Richard. How are you?
I'm really great, thanks. I'm reasonably fresh out of ISO after coming over from Victoria, so it's actually really, really super good to be in the land of the living, quite literally.
Great. And, of course, Roly's here. How you going, Roly?
I was wondering if you were going to forget to mention that. Hey, I'm well.
Good. So, Richard, just to kick off, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how Revelation came about?
Yeah, okay. This is a long story, but I'm going to try and keep it short.
I warned him about this, Richard.
It's all right.
So my background is, I guess I'm a professional film curator and film programmer. That's basically what I do. I worked for the Australian Centre for the Moving Image for 9 years as the head of film programs there. Mm-hmm. I started the Revelation Film Festival 23 years ago. I also program the Melbourne Design Week Film Festival. I directed the Brisbane Film Festival a couple of years ago. I'm doing a PhD in film distribution and exhibition, which right at the moment is incredibly interesting. Who knows what's going to happen, and who knows who is going to live, and who knows who is going to die in the sector. It's incredible. And changing on a weekly basis. So I kind of do that kind of academic research, and also do a bit of lecturing and talking to film students and that sort of thing about, cultural events and event management and that kind of thing. So that's kind of my history. There's a lot of things that's happened over the last 23 years in my career in working in the screen industry. It's incredibly exciting, and you never know what's going to happen next. And that's really probably one of the great things about working in the industry is that you live by your wits. It's a week-to-week existence in many ways, which can be incredibly frustrating, but also enormously exhilarating and quite triumphant, when you have to live by the quality of your ideas. That's kind of what I do. Was someone about to interject?
I was. We've known each other a long time, Richard, but I've always had a picture in my head of you as a little bit of a rebel or an outsider in the industry, and I'm wondering if that's just my imagination or if that actually does kind of inform some of your feelings about your own place in the industry and how you've kind of managed to do, because what you do is quite different, isn't it, compared to other people in the industry?
Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah,
of course.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Well, the answer is fuck yeah. I from the very beginning of doing the film festival, which started in a bar, the Greenwich Bar under His Majesty's Theatre, in the back room there. I started it there. That's kind of where I started. But I was doing things before then, film things before then. But that's where the festival really that's where it got its identity and form. And I started doing it there because there was jack shit happening in Perth in the film environment. And what was happening was really closed and narrow. And I also felt that not just the cultural life, but just the social and political life of this town, I come from Sydney, it was wrong. And I felt that it was really, really important to show a different kind of thinking, a different way of approaching social justice, even back then the environment, politics, community, everything. And the event really was born out and still in most part a personal political viewpoint and social viewpoint. So there was a lot of personal editorial in the event. And I think that's one of the things that, in my view, makes it so strong and so good and a survivor, is that it's about, it has an authenticity. It has a voice. This is what I think, and it has an authenticity of standing behind those views and those approaches, even despite the accepted way of doing things. Let's say, for instance, with ethical sponsorships, we have never taken mining money. We have never taken money from fossil fuels, and we look at whoever approaches us or we approach for funding to be as ethical as they can possibly be. Now, in this day and age, right now, even in WA, that doesn't exist. Yeah. In fact, we had a fight, not a fight, but we had I did an interview recently about that, and I was getting phone calls from the government saying, "Do you realize where your money comes from?" And literally saying that.
Yep.
And they said, "Do you know that most of the arts organisations in WA really are not liking what you're saying?" And this is the kind of thing, and this is just doing an honest thing. This is behaving in an honest, ethical way, and the pressure is put on by other arts organisations who are embedded, whose financial futures are embedded in unethical funding, for want of a better word,
yep.
and government as well. So it's like, you know what, fuck you. So you guys can do your own thing. I'm doing my thing. So the answer to your question, Roly, is yes, we are on the outside, but I don't mind that, because that gives us the total latitude to do whatever we want the way we want it to do it. So we're not bound by any usual way of doing things. We've built the event from zero to what it is now, from nothing to what it is now. I remember in the early days of the event, and when I say the early days of the event, it's like into the 10th year, I personally was going around with my kids in a pram, sticking up posters at Mills Records down in Fremantle, doing a whole run all across town with posters, distributing the programs and the flyers and everything, and simply because it's from the grassroots up event.
I guess I think you feel very comfortable in that space as well, right? But I think the interesting thing is that a lot of people that decide to take that route in their career end up doing it on their own. But you've managed to also get a lot of support from like-minded people as well, and sort of build this team together. And I guess Shady will probably have some more questions about the team and things and how that process works with you. But I think that's one of the great things of what you've been able to do is to make it be bigger than just you with your ideas. It's something that has more legs than that.
Yeah, thanks for saying so. But that again comes down to I think an authentic voice, like authenticity. And look, I'm not against the government; they give me money. And so it's kind of cool. And I'm not against mining either. I'm against I'm if the process in those things is not right, then I'll stand up and say something. But it's about process, not the actual act itself, or not the actual business. But look, it has built. It's taken a long time to build, but. And you know what? So much of the industry is about the last person left standing, and you've got to have the nerve, and you've got to stare into the headlights and stand there. And a lot of people drop away. A lot of people don't have the nerve. A lot of people take the very not easy road, because it's not easy in the arts, whatever you do, but take a different kind of a road of least resistance. But I like the challenge. I like to fight. I like to fight. And I like to confront things that are not right, or things that can be done differently. And I really like look, the event in terms of its program is really about signature works and individual approaches to the industry. And I look at what we do with the festival, it has to mirror that spirit. It has to be what the films are. And so it's an integrated concept. It's not a point of exhibition where I go, I like that film, I like that film, I like that film. Any person can do that in the international marketplace and just put them on. It's what do they mean and how do they mean? And for them to mean something, the frame that I put around them has to be as meaningful as the picture. So that's how I approach it. It's no point just being a point of exhibition. You have to have a feeling behind it, because that in today's world is what is connecting with audiences, not celebrity, not champagne and caviar, although champagne and caviar is
we
pretty
like
nice.
that, yeah.
But it's something else.
So, Richard, do you think it's easier to organise these days, or do you think it was easier when it was a bit smaller back in the late 90s? What would you say?
Look, that's an interesting question. It's probably not any easier,
right,
in terms of the shoulder that you've got to put behind it. I'm still there, sweating, bumping out and bumping in, carrying shit around,
right,
carrying projectors around. Getting films. I'm not the only one doing it, of course, because we do have a really good team. But you're still on the grindstone. But I think over the period of time, I think, to answer your question, I don't know if I can. It hasn't got easier. It hasn't got easier, but it's got more. And I really love the challenge. It's got more challenging, which is a really, really good thing. And it's got, because of the reputation nationally and internationally, it accesses a different kind of film, and it accesses a different kind of guest.
Okay.
And it accesses it just opens doors that were not open before, which are really good. To be able to talk to like really high level people like Jim Jarmusch, Steve Buscemi, a whole bunch of people who might not actually appear at the event or participate in the event, but I can actually talk to them and talk to their PAs, and that's something that's got better over time.
This is going to sound like a very basic question, but I'm fascinated by how you guys choose the films to show. How do you do that?
I know it's not a basic question at all. It's a very hard thing. Like, we get about 500 films sent to us through a call for entries. Generally, and any film festival will say exactly the same thing. 1 in 10 of those films is of a quality that you're able to show.
Okay.
So I say to filmmakers, look, you're not competing with 10,000 filmmakers. You're competing with 10% of that 10,000. So the gene pool is not that big. So the competition is actually not as big as you think. All you need to do is make a really fucking good movie, and you're in with a pretty good shot. So I watch all those movies, all those 500. I don't necessarily watch them all the way through, because you know pretty well very early in a movie whether it's going to be of the standard or not. So, and then we do Jack Sargent, who is the program director, and myself. We do a lot of reading online about what's happening with certain films and who's making what, and we look at what other film festivals are doing, although we're quite independent of that. Probably usually we look at what other film festivals are doing when we come across a film. It's like, okay, where is this screened before? So we look at that, and then and then when we've got a few of the fundamental building blocks in place, that starts to dictate the tone of the festival, and the tone start to get a picture of what artists internationally are trying to say, and what the general thematics of the cultural environment internationally are. Because, like, I don't know, like many other environments, there is a discernible theme that emerges every year that just does out of the politics and economics and social justice and the whole thing. So sometimes it's gender, sometimes it's architecture, sometimes it's the environment, sometimes it's music. So all these things, they start to emerge. And then when you've got a few building blocks in place, there are certain things that you go actively out to look for, like music films, environmental films, First Nations films, those kind of things. So you actively seek them, and then the other things they just kind of develop. And then you look at when you're looking at the films, you look at what films start talking to each other and start making sense, like a jigsaw puzzle, and that you can piece together to form an overall picture of which eventually is the event. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of how it happens.
Yeah, no, I think you kind of answered my next question in there. I was wondering if you set out with a theme for each festival, or it kind of grows itself. Is that how you look at it?
Yeah, it grows itself. It grows itself. And many filmmakers, particularly in the call for entries, they get quite angry with us sometimes because that film might have been accepted into 50 film festivals and we don't accept it.
Right.
And there are many good films, yeah, bastards. There are many good films that we see that are totally programmable, but does it fit? It's like making a movie. Does that film have a meaning? Or let's say you're making a movie. Does that shot, which is the film, have a meaning in the film that you're making?
Yeah.
It might be the most amazing thing that you will ever shoot in your life, but what is the relationship to the story? And if it has no relationship, you cut it. And so that unfortunately happens with quite a good amount of films. They're good and they're totally screenable with great credentials, but ultimately, as the pieces of my film come together, which is the film festival, if that film doesn't work in the flow, it's out. And when I explain that to filmmakers, they get it, and it's a kind of a science of festival programming, which I don't know if many film festivals actually work in that kind of a way. But when I explain that, it's like they go, right, I get it. I actually get that. But that elevates the whole program to a much higher intellectual concept.
Yeah.
But still, yet it's understandable from audiences, and as a result, an audience member may see one film, and they'll see a pretty good one, or they may see all the films, and if they see all the films, they will most definitely see the thread and the relationship of each film to each other. And so that's what we try and do.
Can you tell us what sort of theme developed in this year's festival then, for listeners that might
look?
Not know?
There's not an enormous amount of comedy, which is unsurprising. But what I've seen emerging, because we're doing two components, we're doing a physical version and an online version at the same time, and there is most definitely a complete and utter fascination with technology and the ethics of technology. And that's seen across, like we've got a couple of films looking at artificial intelligence and surveillance through, facial recognition and that sort of thing. We've got a couple of films that are looking at, corporate influence in our lives, which is largely technology-based. We've got a film called I, Human, which again is about artificial intelligence and the politics around that and the use of that in the military and a whole range of other things. So most definitely technology is a major feature of what is going on in art and culture right at the moment. I'm just scrolling through the program right now, and there is a lot of it. I love it. It's such a fascinating story. And, films like the The Trouble with Being Born, which was the film that the Melbourne Film Festival pulled because
I think that's
some
on our
issues
list of
around-
things to ask you about.
What's that?
That's on our list of things to ask you about, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
the controversy
we
around
can
that
get
film.
to that, but that's a non-fiction film that are dealing with these issues. That's dealing with these issues. It's dealing with a lot more issues actually than that. But that's fully embedded in those kind of works. So it's really that is the main thing. And ultimately, they're not about artificial intelligence or technology. They're about control and authority. And so that is the higher level thematic, and the lower level is exploring that through exploring technology itself. But it's really about authority and control. So
what makes that a film that someone would ban?
Well, look, I can actually see the argument as to why it would be a controversial film, because it is, it's beautifully told. It's very poetic, but it's not about what people think it is. It's actually about, in my view, about loneliness. It's not about the android and the sexuality surrounding the android.
So the android is kind of a childlike of age. Yeah. Okay. Right.
Yeah. The android is like 10 years old or whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
About 10 years. And there are most definitely there is most definitely a gaze in the film, and you can interpret sexual overtones in it, but then in doing that, but there is no sex in it, and there's no real suggestion of sex in it either, and so when you look at the film like that, you have to question what it makes you do. What it makes you do is question your own gaze. Why are you asking that question? Why does this film feel that there's? Why do I feel there's some sexuality in this film when there is none? So you kind of question your own gaze, because the film doesn't say that there is any sex. It doesn't really suggest that there's any sex. It's what you put onto it that is sexual.
Yeah, so sexualized. So it does seem quite an extreme step to take to ban the film, given that, and that there's, given technology and our use of virtual environments and things like that, these type of issues are probably well worth discussing.
Yeah. I agree. I agree.
And especially,
they got scared.
Yeah, artificial intelligence and all the rest of it. How is it ethical to have someone create a childlike artificial intelligence and engage with them on certain levels and maybe not others? But that's an important conversation to have. Why would it be something? So we're looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, we're both going to check it out at different times, aren't we? That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, well, look, I'll just add on to that, and I'll say I completely agree with you, and I like and know the people at the Melbourne Film Festival very well, and have worked with them on numerous occasions, and they just got scared. But I don't think it was the programmers. I would say that was probably a board decision. They didn't want to be tainted with any kind of anything like this, and they just got scared. And in all honesty, God bless the Melbourne Film Festival. I think that lack of backbone, for want of a better phrase, says volumes about the state of film, about the state and purpose of film festivals and cultural events, to lose your nerve right at the very time when nerve is exactly what we need. And that gets back to what I was saying before about authenticity. That's not an authentic voice. That's you're a chicken.
Yeah.
And you've lost your nerve.
Yeah.
And God bless them. I really do like them. And the Melbourne Film Festival is a really great event. But that speaks volumes about what your place in the industry is.
Yeah.
I don't think the film itself will do too badly out of that, though, will it? To to have a film that's banned somewhere must be kind of a badge of honor, or it's certainly going to lead more people to want to see it as well at some level.
I had in 1999, I had a film banned by the local classification office. WA has their own classification office. I don't know if they still do or not, actually, but they had their own classification office that could override the Commonwealth classification office. Yeah. And so I had a film called Sick, The Life and Death of Bob Flanagan, Super Masochist, and it was a documentary about the world's oldest survivor of cystic fibrosis. And the way he got through his pain was through sadomasochism, and he turned it into an art form in New York, in the States. And so he was doing all kinds of things. Anyway, the government took umbrage at this. The local, I can't remember who it was at the time, one of the Liberal politicians, took umbrage at this and decided to ban the film without seeing it. It was a very popular film internationally and very highly regarded. Anyway, they banned it. I played all these ridiculous games. I forced them to look at the movie to say, you can't ban it without looking at the movie. And the media were all over it. You know, it was fun. It was actually front page news. It was all over the TV and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I arranged a screening for it at Luna, and they sent their classification body in, you know, the people, you know, on the committee, and in walked a nun, a priest, and a guy from the army in his full army uniform.
Wow.
The TV cameras were there and everything. It was so funny. I don't know who tipped them off actually, but the TV cameras were there, and I thought they walked in and I thought, oh man, this baby just ain't gonna fly. So in they went to watch the movie, and at the end of the movie, the nun came out in tears. She said, "Oh, that's the best documentary I've ever seen," they all unanimously voted to unban it.
Oh, great!
So that was that experience. And then the very next year, they banned another film. And after that, I just thought, "Fuck it, I'm not going to go through this process again." I just showed it, But you know, that was my experience with the classification and banning of films. So I can tell you what, after that, I'm not afraid of that process.
So sorry, your advice is if someone bans the film, just show it anyway? Is that what I'm getting? Okay. I just want to make sure.
Drum it up.
To anyone,
just going back to the film that was banned, until the point that I'd shown that film 3 weeks earlier in Adelaide, and I had 30 people come. After it was banned and unbanned in WA, I had 300 people.
That's it. Yeah, That's it. There it is.
Nice. Good. Now, Richard, I know this must be a little bit of a difficult task for you, but do you think you could pick your top 5 at this year's festival? Is that possible? Your top 5 recommended films?
You want me to kill my babies? That's what you want me to do.
The other ones, yes. Everything except 5.
Yeah. Here we go. Here's my top 5. I think the local horror film An Ideal Host, I think that's just so awesome. Mm-hmm. It's so well made, on no money. It is so funny and really, and you know, the special effects are awesome, and the way that they did them are equally awesome. So I totally take my hat off to that team, and I say An Ideal Host is one of my favourites.
Do you know offhand who made that film?
Robert Woods.
Okay.
Woods.
And so is it a full-length feature?
Yeah, these are all features. I'll give you features. The other one of my favourites is a documentary called You Don't Know Me, which is a documentary about Showgirls, the movie Showgirls, which is meant to be one of the worst movies ever made. But this documentary goes out to explain that it's probably one of the most misunderstood movies ever made. It was made by Paul Verhoeven, who directed RoboCop and Starship Troopers and all that sort of thing.
Right.
But the documentary is so great. It is so funny and so honest and really, really cool. And we've got it on a double bill with Showgirls. Mm-hmm. So that's an awesome movie. I really like that movie. I also like there is. I'm just scrolling through the program now. I really, really like a science fiction film called Archive, It's really well put together. It's a big screen movie. It's a fantastic film about a guy whose wife dies. It's set in the future. He's in charge of like this kind of enviro lab in the middle of the mountains in Japan, very isolated and that sort of thing. And his wife is kind of kept alive for a certain amount of period, her memory in a thing called the archive. So he can talk to her, but it's only for a limited period. It's a really, really well-made movie. And again, explores loneliness and isolation and that sort of thing. I also like a lot The Trouble with Being Born, the film that we were talking about. I mean, that's a true, proper art movie, an art house movie. You don't see those kind of things very often anymore. And it's like, that's a proper movie, that one. Cool. So what's that? Is that
I think
3 or 4?
That's 4.
That's 4. Yeah.
That's 4. Okay, I'm down to the tough, the tough ones now. Look, I would also have to say, I also have to say one of my favourite films is a film called Atlantis, and that's also set in the future, but not it's set in the near future, and it's set in a Ukraine that has driven out the Russians and won the war against the Russians. And it's like a devastated country rebuilding itself. And it's kind of this really fantastic, I wouldn't say romance, but it's a relationship drama set in this post-war world. And it's made by the guy, I don't know if you've seen the movie The Tribe, which we showed a few years ago.
I've heard of
Ukrainian director. Yeah, and The Tribe is also a fairly bleak film, but the whole film is told in sign language. There's no actual dialogue, and it's the whole cast and everyone is deaf, and it centers around a deaf school and deaf people, and so it's quite a violent movie and very bleak. And there's a lot of arguments and a lot of fighting in it, but the loudest it gets is people's hands clicking together doing the sign language, despite these incredibly intense scenes. It's an amazing movie. Like really amazing. So if anyone gets the opportunity to see The Tribe, they have to. And this is made by the same guy, and it has such a beautiful, bleak poetry to it, which I think is just amazing. It's a really, really strong movie. And so they would probably be my 5, and they're all really accessible, but challenging. They explore screen history. They explore filmmaking, and they're big screen. They're for the big screen. They're not, Netflix or a computer. Like they're properly big screen movies. So that would be my 5.
Cool. Thanks. Yeah, I think I've got about 3 or 4 of those lined up for the festival actually. So that's good.
Oh, you're in for a treat.
Nice. Thanks. Roly.
Oh! Is it that time? I think we've pretty much covered everything. I guess the last thing I wanted to ask, not that it's an afterthought at all, but just what's going on with XRWA and maybe just the reasoning behind creating this other kind of sub festival within a festival, and the plans for that, and where it goes next, Richard.
Yeah, well, look, XRWA, XR stands for Extended Reality, which is, immersive technology across the board, augmented reality, machine learning, VR, and we also include games and such in that as well. So a couple of years ago, we were looking at embracing games in a much more active way, and virtual reality, of course, and examining the convergence of these forms. And then, lo and behold, the government, before it was the government, announced that they wanted to fund a virtual reality event, film virtual reality festival of sorts, and they didn't know exactly what. So they put it out to an EOI. We bid to get the event, and we did, which we were very fortunate to get. So we started to build it's not a separate component, but it is another part of the Revelation event, and very timely because of the convergence of everything, of technology and screen-based platforms, the changing aesthetics of film into computer games, the incredible LED technology in producing things like The Mandalorian and amazing visual effects and that sort of thing. The use of game engines in not just building games but in cinema. Those live visual effects are built out of the Unreal Engine, which is a game engine. That's live visual effects that are happening as the film is being made. It's just phenomenal. So these kind of things, they're right in our zone now. They're right in the traditional sector now. I wish the traditional sector, certainly in WA, were a little bit more aware of the way that this convergence is happening, because they're not. So part of what we're doing is exactly that, is to bring the traditional screen sector here in WA, not to bring them with us, or but to provide the opportunity for them to explore this stuff before it gets away from them. Because it's moving so fast. If you don't understand it, you're finished, or your future is severely limited.
Are there other film festivals you know of that are embracing this type of programming in terms of?
Not to the extent that we are. Probably the only one that I know of that is as active as we are, and unfortunately they were completely destroyed by COVID, is South by Southwest. So they're probably the only one that's embracing this in such an active way. And when I say an active way, the Revelation Film Festival, actually made 4 VR films this year, which are going online probably tomorrow, which we employed like maybe 50 composers, dancers, musicians, filmmakers, sound engineers. It was a COVID relief package specifically for the arts that we received funding for from Lottery West. So we actually produced a number of works which are really great by anyone's standards. So in working in that way, I don't think any film festival is exhibiting, talking about them, and producing them like what we, in the way that we are. I think we're really right at the front, and it's so important for us because, like I said earlier, the film industry is collapsing in front of our very eyes, and for us as a cultural event to be actually producing work, not just exhibiting work, but producing it, that is where that is going to help. We're going to survive. And other people aren't, because other people, all due respect to them, other events are one thing. That's what they are. They're just one thing. And they have been the same for a very long time. And we change every year and do different things every year. And because of that, we're alive.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So good. You'll be standing atop the rubble next year, and everything else will be gone.
Some kind of flag flapping like Iwo Jima in the wind. Yeah.
Now, Richard, just finally, where and when can people see the films for the Rev Festival?
They'll be at Luna, the Windsor, and Essex from the 9th to the 13th. Of December. And also we have about 20 films that are online, for rent from the 9th to the 20th of December. So they can just head to the website, revelationfilmfest.org, and take a look at them there.
Brilliant.
That's great, because
the online films are awesome.
Sorry, the cinemas are still a bit limited in terms of the numbers you can have in post-COVID?
Yeah, we're very fortunate here in Perth, obviously, because of Luna. The cinema is so big. So that capacity generally is 450, and we're allowed 300.
Okay.
That's pretty good.
Screen one, isn't it? Yeah.
Actually, not quite. It's a little bit less. We're allowed, I think, 280, something like that, 290.
Great.
Okay, so definitely those online films can also be downloaded at the website starting from the 9th.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a couple online which are in the live event as well.
Great.
Excellent. Well, great. Richard, thanks very much for joining us tonight. That was great. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, Richard.
It's a real pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Добре, друже, давай. Все, щасливо, бережненько.
На війну йшов, думав, хоч що зміниться, блядь. А хер, блядь, в них все рівно